times.
For the headlines.
Beijing reiterates its backing of Hong Kong's embattled leader Carrie Lam after a massive demonstration demanding her resignation over a controversial extradition bill.
Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong on Monday joined the thousands of protesters gathered near the territory's government headquarters after his release from prison.
Iran will break the uranium stockpile limit set by Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers in the next 10 days, according to the spokesman for the country's atomic energy agency, while also warning that Iran has the need for uranium enriched up to 20%, and that's just a step away from weapons-grade levels.
And NASA has announced that it will be taking women to the moon in a new mission called Artemis, goddess of the hunt, as well as the moon and Apollo's twin sister.
Amalma Angeles, wherever you're watching from around the world, thank you very much for joining us.
We welcome our viewers here in the Philippines and around the world. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sam Cepeda.
And now to the news. Beijing reiterated its backing of Hong Kong's embattled leader Carrie Lam after a massive demonstration demanding her resignation over a controversial extradition bill. Protest organizers said some 2 million people choked Hong Kong streets on Sunday, despite Lam's decision to indefinitely suspend passage of the bill a day earlier. Critics fear the Beijing-packed law will entangle people in China's notoriously opaque and politicized courts and damage the city's reputation as a safe business hub. Although Lam offered a rare concession on Saturday, she stopped short of committing to permanently scrapping the unpopular law. Her gesture was swiftly rejected by protest leaders who called on her to resign, shelve the bill entirely, and apologize for police using tear gas and rubber bullets earlier in the week. But Lam, the first woman to get the international financial hub's top job, continues to enjoy support from the Chinese leadership. Take a listen.
中国政府、中央政府对林郑月娥行政长官和特区政府的工作一直是予以充分肯定的。中央政府也将继续坚定地支持行政长官和特区政府依法施政。重申一下，中央政府强烈谴责有关暴力行径，我们坚定地支持警方。
Traffic in Hong Kong resumed on Monday after protesters cleared major streets and gathered near the city's government headquarters. The demonstrators who stayed after a massive protest march the day before were seen streaming Monday morning into a space outside Hong Kong's Legislative Council after police who had cleared it reopened the area. Their decision to leave major roads allowed police to reopen them to traffic, averting the possibility of clashes similar to those that broke out on June 12, resulting in about 80 people being injured. The government building was closed Monday. Activists were staging strikes and other smaller events Monday. They are demanding that Hong Kong's chief executive Carrie Lam must scrap a proposed extradition bill that she has suspended under intense pressure from residents worried it would undermine legal protections in the former British colony.
And we are very angry that Carrie Lam had not responded to the demands of all the protesters. But now is the time to talk about strategy. And talk about strategy is to how to make the whole struggle into a long-term struggle and not a day struggle. So I think if Carrie Lam do not respond to the five demands by the protesters, people will come back and the struggle will continue.
Meanwhile, Hong Kong saw its massive, huge rally and protests yesterday Massive demonstrations clogged Hong Kong streets as protesters urged the government to permanently scrap the controversial extradition bill that would allow extradition to mainland China. At the scene was our EBC Hong Kong Bureau, Kit Wong.
The largest mass protest took place in Hong Kong on June 16, 2019, with over 2 million people participated in it. Despite the hot weather condition, protesters holding slogans filled the streets of Hong Kong on Sunday to oppose the extradition bill proposed by Chief Executive Carrie Lam.
Now the people heading to the government headquarters, they are shouting, They want to convince government to release those people they arrested. They also want to convince government not to implement the extradition law.
Another rallying cry of the protesters was to have their leader step down from her position as they believed she has ignored the feelings of the Hong Kongers. People's slogans also showed they want justice for the students who were brutally treated and arrested by the police.
Now almost 9 p.m. in the evening here. So many people, they are still shouting, cheap boy, to convince the Hong Kong government to release those students arrested by the police.
They were also demanding the government that the extradition bill has dismissed and not just be suspended.
We are closing to the end point, and it is more than a million of protesters.
The rally began at 2:30 in the afternoon at Victoria Park, passing by Causeway Bay, Wan Chau, and to the end point, which was in Admiralty Police Headquarters. The mass protest has concluded late at night.
At the back of me is the Hong Kong Police Headquarters, and this is the end point of the rallies.
We have interviewed some protesters for their view of this mass demonstration. Politician Mr. Martin Lee has given his point of view on this matter.
People are still protesting against the extradition bill. The people would like it to be withdrawn by the government instead of simply suspending it and still leaving it with the Legislative Council. This is a thoroughly bad bill, and if passed, Hong Kong cannot continue to be an international city. So we want this bill scrapped. And this is why the people are here, and also they are protesting against the government branding of the movement for democracy and against this bill as rioters. And this is clearly wrong. That means everybody here was guilty of riot a few days ago. But these people were not part of the riot at all. So Hong Kong people would like that verdict to be reversed by the government.
Today we have more than 1 million people. So we are waiting for we would like government to give a positive comment to the last week, which we are not the real. We are just a peaceful protest. So that I hope that today we can show our unity and Carrie Lam need to step down.
We're here predominantly to lend our support to basically allow freedom of expression, freedom of speech here in Hong Kong, and to maintain that for extradition to happen, and thus puts a sort of soft pressure on people not to be able to speak their mind. And I think it's quite important to be able to speak your mind.
I come here is for the future of our children. I want they live in a society that they have the freedom and they can do whatever they like, but not controlled by other ones. Other one maybe stay behind you and then tell you you cannot do something. Okay, I don't want that.
No China extradition. Rest for Hong Kong. Respect. it is not okay that government is implementing this law, and it is not okay that the Hong Kong police are showing such brutality towards students who are unarmed.
Yeah, amazing. And historical incident. Very good.
Rally is just finished, and there were 2 million people, 2 million Hong Kong people. We hope that Carrie Lam would step down, and Carrie Lam would listen to what we were saying. We were saying that we don't want the evil law. We want her to release all the protesters immediately, and we want her to stop labeling that it was a rally on Wednesday, because it was not. It was a very peaceful, very reasonable, very happy protest, I would say, and I think the international, the overseas, and the other countries can be our supporters.
This is the end goal of the rallies. They will stay here until 12 a.m.
A day before the largest rally, a protester fell to his death from a ledge of a building. It was said that this man was seen holding an anti-extradition banner. Many of the protesters brought with them white flowers to mourn and offer prayers for the man's death. The rally was generally peaceful despite the large number of the protesters, which included youths and elderly, parents with babies, and even people with disabilities. And no clashes between the protesters and the police have been reported.
From Hong Kong, reporting for Eagle News. This is Kit Wong, and I am 1 with 25.
Thank you, Kit. Meanwhile, Joshua Wong, an activist for pro-democracy group Demosisto and a leading figure in Hong Kong's 2014 Umbrella Movement demonstrations, was released from prison on Monday. Speaking to reporters just after leaving the Lai Chi Kok Correctional Facility, Wong urged the people of Hong Kong to keep protesting a proposed extradition bill, which would enable authorities to send some suspects to stand trial in courts in mainland China.
What we ask for is such urge Carrie Lam, the evil chief executive, should withdraw the extradition amendment. And what we try to do is just through civil disobedience and direct action, and let the whole world, let the international communities to realize that how Hong Kong people will not keep silent under the suppression of President Xi and the Chief Executive Carrie Lam. Carrie Lam must step down. Otherwise, I believe in the next few weeks, before the 22nd anniversary of Hong Kong transfer of sovereignty, more and more Hong Kong people, not only 1 million or 2 million people, will come and join our fight until the day we get back our basic human rights and freedom.
The 22-year-old Wong had served a 2-month sentence for contempt related to his involvement in the 2014 protests, advocating a more democratic elections process in the former British colony. His sentence was reduced to 2 months from 3 because he was only a teenager when he was arrested in 2014. The young activist won an appeal of a separate conviction and 6-month sentence for unlawful assembly and released after spending more than 2 months in prison in that case.
They will try the best. I will join the movement against the extradition law amendment. However, I'm not sure what is happening now. Because in prison, it's hard for us to get certain information. I will first have certain discussion with my teammates from Demosisto and to decide what's the next step. But no matter what happens, I believe I will join the protest soon.
Mr. Wong.
Oh, in the middle.
In other news, Iran will break the uranium stockpile limit set by Tehran's nuclear deal with world powers in the next 10 days. This is according to the spokesman for the country's atomic agency, while also warning that Iran has the need for uranium enriched up to 20%. Now that's just a step away from weapons-grade levels. The announcement indicated Iran's determination to break from the landmark 2015 accord, which has steadily unraveled since the Trump administration pulled America out of the deal last year and reimposed tough economic sanctions on Iran, sending its economy into free fall. The spokesman for Iran's nuclear agency, Behruz Kamalvandi, made the announcement during a news conference with local journalists at Iran's Arak heavy water facility that was carried live on Iranian state television. The development comes in the wake of suspected attacks on oil tankers last week in the region, attacks that Washington has blamed on Iran and as tensions have spiked between Iran and the United States a year after President Trump unilaterally withdrew America for the nuclear deal. Kamalvandi also acknowledged that the country already quadrupled its production of low-enriched uranium.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is stressing diplomacy in responding to suspected attacks on oil tankers near a Middle East shipping route and says American officials are reaching out to their foreign counterparts. Pompeo told Fox News that the United States is considering a full range of options, including a military response to combat Iranian aggression.
We are confident that we can take a set of actions that can restore deterrence, which is our mission set.
You say a full range of options. Does that include a military response?
Of course. Of course, the president will consider everything we need to do to make sure, right? But what the president said, we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. The previous administration put them on a pathway that virtually guaranteed that they could get there. So we withdrew from the ridiculous JCPOA and are moving ourselves towards a set of policies which will convince Iran to behave simply like a normal nation.
These unprovoked Pompeo says the U.S. will use means, diplomatic and otherwise, to guarantee unhindered shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. Meanwhile, U.S. Senator Tom Cotton says he would support President Donald Trump using military force to retaliate against Iran for the tanker attacks.
A retaliatory military strike. Yes, Margaret. Going back to President Washington and all the way down to President Trump, the fastest way to get the fire and fury of the U.S. military unleashed on you is to interfere with the freedom of navigation on the open seas and in the air. That's exactly what Iran is doing in one of the world's most important strategic choke points. The President has the authorization to act to defend American interests.
Welcome back. As lights turned back across Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay after a massive blackout that hit tens of millions of people, authorities were still largely in the dark about what caused the collapse of the interconnected grid. And we're tallying the damage from the unforeseen disaster. A massive blackout has left tens of millions of people without electricity in Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay on Sunday, in what the Argentine president called an unprecedented failure in the country's power grid. Authorities were working frantically to restore power, and by the evening, electricity had returned to 98% of Argentina, according to state news agency Telam. Power had also been restored to most of Uruguay's 3 million people, as well as to people in neighboring Paraguay. Earlier on Sunday, Argentine voters were forced to cast ballots by the light of cell phones in gubernatorial elections. Public transportation was halted, shops closed, and patients dependent on home medical equipment were urged to go to hospitals with generators. Argentina's power grid is generally known for being in a state of disrepair, with substations and cables insufficiently upgraded as power rates remained largely frozen for years. The country's Energy Secretary Gustavo Lopetegui said the blackout occurred at about 7 a.m. local time when a key Argentine interconnection system collapsed. By mid-afternoon, nearly half of Argentina's 44 million people were still in the dark. The Argentine energy company Edesur said on Twitter that the failure originated at an electricity transmission point between the power stations at the country's Yacyretá Dam and Salto Grande in the country's northeast. But why it occurred was still unknown. In Paraguay, meanwhile, power in rural communities in the south near the border with Argentina and Uruguay was also cut. The country's National Energy Administration said service was restored by afternoon by redirecting energy from the Itaipu hydroelectric plant the country shares with neighboring Brazil. In Argentina, only the southernmost province of Tierra del Fuego was unaffected by the outage because it's not connected to the main power grid.
The Los Angeles Police Department is gathering evidence and video footage in an administrative investigation into an off-duty officer who shot and killed a man authorities say attacked him inside a Southern California Costco wholesale warehouse store. An off-duty Los Angeles police officer was among 3 people injured during a shooting inside a Costco wholesale on Friday, in which 1 person was killed. The off-duty officer discharged his firearm during the incident, authorities confirmed on Saturday. It was not immediately clear whether the unidentified officer was the only person who fired shots inside the store or if another person also opened fire or had a weapon. Corona Police Officer Tobias Coron Bacalis said on Saturday he could not confirm if there was more than 1 shooter. He said no one was in custody following the shooting, which prompted a stampede of frightened shoppers to flee the store east of Los Angeles and seek cover inside. Witnesses said they saw a man with a mohawk haircut arguing with someone near a freezer section when shots rang out and at least 6 times. The man involved in the argument was killed, Corona Police Lieutenant Jeff Edwards said. The injured officer was treated for minor injuries and released from a hospital, Los Angeles Police Officer Greg Kraft said. Shoppers and employees described terror and chaos when shots rang out shortly before 8 p.m. Friday, and police warned the store. Shrieks from inside the store were heard on video recorded by shopper Nikki Tate, who had stopped by with her daughter to pick up steaks and lobsters for Father's Day.
Me and Taylor literally walked in here to the back where the seafood was and just gunshots. About 6 or 7 of them. Oh my God.
She dropped to the ground and crawled towards her daughter, who was at the other end. They huddled until they were able to escape through a side door. She said her first thought was, is this another mass shooting? No identities were immediately released. Police said the name of the deceased won't be released until the Riverside County coroner notifies family.
And another shooting incident, this time in Philadelphia. Authorities said that 1 person has been killed and at least 7 others have been shot during a graduation party there. KYW-TV reports the shooting occurred Sunday shortly before 10:30 p.m. local time, or Monday shortly before 2:30 a.m. GMT near 70th Street and Reed Bird Place. Authorities say 4 teenagers between the ages of 15 and 17 suffered gunshot wounds to their legs. 4 adults in their 20s were shot in various parts of their bodies. Police said the one fatality was an adult. Authorities have not provided a motive for the shooting. No arrests have been made in the shooting.
Okay. Where did the theater go?
This evening, a little after 10 o'clock, there were about 60 people behind me celebrating graduation, as we understand it. At least one individual came up, we don't know if it was in a car or on foot, and fired multiple rounds. Unfortunately, there is one person who was pronounced dead at the hospital. We believe preliminarily he is in his 20s. We do not have much more than that at this point in time. So it is all very early for us, as you might imagine. This was some sort of graduation party. There's no indications that there were any problems back here other than that. There was nothing that suggested there was a fight that preceded this, at least according to the people here. Again, we don't know if the shooter or shooters left on foot or if they left in a car. We're trying to get as much information. Hopefully there'll be some cameras, or some of the people out here will be able to provide more information. Probably the people were probably clustered close together because it appears as though the shooter or shooters struck at least one person with every round. So that's what we have so far.
Okay. Where did the theater go?
An encrypted phone message sent by a missing Belgian tourist could hold a clue to the 18-year-old's disappearance from an Australian coastal town, his father said. Theo Hayes was last seen leaving a Byron Bay nightclub late on May 31. Police say they are baffled by his disappearance. His father, Laurent Hayes, flew from Belgium to Australia last week to take part in the search, which now involves homicide detectives. Hayes on Monday made a public appeal for help to access his son's encrypted WhatsApp account. Hayes told reporters in Byron Bay that it's crucial that investigators get access to his son's WhatsApp account.
Disappearance of Theo Hayes. We know that Theo used WhatsApp the night he disappeared. We understand the politics about confidentiality and respect that. However, this is a question of providing assistance to a person in grave danger. It is vital that investigators get access to Theo's WhatsApp account without delay. Every minute counts. When I left Belgium, I promised Theo's little brother, Lucas, that I would bring his brother home. Please, help me keep my promise to him. People have the power. Let love rule. Thank you.
On Saturday, myself, Detective Inspector Grant Erickson, the father Lahore, and another close family member drove around the Byron Bay area for a number of hours. We were showing Lahore exactly where we've been searching and where we intend to search. I would like to put another appeal out there to the community. And when we release that footage, I urge you to look, and hopefully if people were in the area at that time, that they may have recognised or have some information that is leading to the disappearance of Theo Hayes. Because I will say it again, we are baffled. We are baffled because that is all we have.
Police Superintendent Dave Ruptel said WhatsApp's owner, Facebook, was being asked for access to the missing man's account. The search for the missing man in one of Australia's premier tourist destinations is continuing on land, sea, and in the air. Theo Hayes had been preparing to return to Belgium after 8 months of traveling around Australia. He was reported missing on June 6, but he failed to return to his hostel and could not be contacted. His last confirmed sightings were when he was captured on CCTV buying alcohol from a liquor store before he went to the Cheeky Monkeys nightclub.
In other news, Sudan's former President Omar al-Bashir appeared in public for the first time on Sunday since his ouster 2 months ago, as he was led to a prosecutor's office in a corruption investigation. The deposed strongman has been held under arrest in the capital, Khartoum, since the military removed him from power in April amid mass protests against his 30-year rule. The military has since been locked in a tense standoff with the protest movement demanding civilian rule, even as it has promised reforms and held on-again, off-again talks with opposition leaders. A judicial official with the prosecutor's office said al-Bashir was questioned over accusations that include money laundering and the possession of large amounts of foreign currency. He said the probe partly related to millions of dollars worth of cash in US dollars, euros, and Sudanese pounds that were found in al-Bashir's home a week after his ouster. The official Suna news agency quoted the police spokesman as saying al-Bashir's defense lawyers attended the questioning and he returned to prison afterwards. Al-Bashir has the right to appeal within a week, according to Suna. In May, al-Bashir was charged with involvement in killing protesters and incitement to kill protesters during the popular uprising that started in December. The military toppled him on April 11. Al-Bashir is also wanted by the International Criminal Court over charges of war crimes and genocide linked to the Darfur conflict in the 2000s, but the military has said it would not extradite him to The Hague. He was the only sitting head of state for whom an international arrest warrant has been issued.
Hong Kong stocks rallied on Monday, leading many Asian markets higher after last week's losses, with investors cheering a decision by the city to suspend plans to push through a controversial extradition law. Investors returned to buying in Hong Kong after 3 days of losses that saw the Hang Seng drop more than 2% after protests against the law, which would have allowed extradition to China turned violent Wednesday. Another peaceful demonstration Sunday saw around 2 million people take to the streets, according to organizers. The plan had also spooked business leaders who feared it would damage the city's reputation as an international business hub. Investors are also moving cautiously ahead of 2 huge market-moving events: the Federal Reserve policy meeting this week with its plans for interest rates in focus, and the G20 summit next week, where U.S. President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping are due to hold trade talks. The Hang Seng closed up to 0.45%, while Shanghai gained 0.2%, and Tokyo's Nikkei ended up 0.03%. Elsewhere, Jakarta, Seoul, and Taipei all ended the day in the red. In early European trade, London added 0.1%, with Frankfurt up to 0.2%, and Paris gaining almost 0.1 percent.
Meanwhile, a political analyst in Hong Kong gives his comments following the historic mass protest against a China extradition law. He said the city's leader, Carrie Lam, political capital has already been squandered. He also said the chief executive cannot ensure the territory's stability and prosperity and cannot maintain a good investment environment, and had managed to antagonize the business community. Take a look.
I think her political capital has already been squandered. The pro-establishment camp doesn't believe in her. It believes that she has been doing very badly. Hong Kong people no longer trust her. They think she's very arrogant. They think that she does not understand the political situation at all. Her only strategy now is to count on Beijing's support. with Beijing's support, she can still hold on to her position. There are media reports that the Chinese leadership is very unhappy with her. Certainly, when the chief executive cannot ensure the territory's stability and prosperity, cannot maintain a good investment environment, and manage to antagonize the business community, she cannot be seen to be doing a satisfactory job in the eyes of the Chinese authorities. To get rid of her at this point will be very embarrassing for Beijing. Beijing doesn't want to be seen to be making concessions to mass movements. It is very concerned with the demonstration effect on China as well. It is possible for Beijing to make a tactical retreat at the moment, since it is in difficulties domestically and internationally. But the long-term strategy remains that the Chinese leadership would like to have a tighter control of Hong Kong. It believes that Hong Kong is less important for China's modernization, and it feels flattened with the demands of localism and even the pro-independence sentiments.
Huawei's founder likened his company to a badly damaged plane on Monday and said revenues will be $30 billion less than forecast over the next 2 years. Ran Zhengfei, who is also Huawei's CEO, said on a panel of the company's headquarters that the Chinese telecom giant will reduce capacity. He said the company expected revenues of about $100 billion annually for the next 2 years, compared to $105 billion in 2018. In February, he said the company was targeting $125 billion in 2019.
说我们未来这2年公司会减产的，我们估计会下降300亿美金，这样子在今年和明年的销售收入都会在1000亿美元左右。2021年我们可以重新焕发出勃勃生机，重新为人类社会提供服务。
In May, the U.S. put Huawei on a blacklist, meaning that American companies that want to sell parts of Huawei will need approval from the U.S. Commerce Department. U.S. officials accuse Chinese technology companies, such as Huawei, of stealing trade secrets and threatening cybersecurity. Ren said it never occurred to Huawei that the American government would be so determined to take such a wide range of what he called extreme measures against the company. Still, he said it wouldn't prevent Huawei from doing business with American companies in the future.
Senior Boeing executives on Monday apologized to airlines and families of victims of 737 MAX crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. Speaking at the Paris Air Show at Le Bourget Airport, CEO Kevin McAllister said the company was very sorry for the loss of lives in the Lion Air crash in October and Ethiopian Airlines crash in March. A total of 346 people were killed. Senior Boeing executives on Monday apologized to airlines and families of victims of 737 MAX crashes in Indonesia and Ethiopia. Speaking at the Paris Air Show at Le Bourget Airport, CEO Kevin McAllister said the company was very sorry for the loss of lives in the Lion Air crash in October and the Ethiopian Airlines crash in March. A total of 346 people were killed. Take a listen.
First, we are very sorry for the loss of lives as a result of the tragic accidents of both Ethiopian 302 and Lion Air 610. And our thoughts and our prayers are with the loved ones of those who lost their lives. Safety is sacred in this company. And our people who work in the factories, the engineers who design our airplanes, to all of us in every corner of this business. Safety is simply the top priority in everything we do. And company-wide, as Greg said, our first priority is doing absolutely the right thing and doing everything to get this airplane safely returned to service.
Executives also apologized for the disruption to airlines and passengers from the subsequent grounding of all MAX planes worldwide. They stressed Boeing was working hard to learn from what went wrong, but wouldn't say when the plane could fly again.
Day in and day out, we've been working with the FAA and regulators around the world to ensure that we're answering all of their questions and addressing any concerns that they may have. We're also supporting our airline customers during this challenging time and collectively preparing to return the fleet back to service. We're mindful of the importance of restoring public trust and confidence in Boeing on behalf of our airline customers. Safety is a shared priority amongst government regulators, suppliers, manufacturers, and operators. And we're dedicated to working this broad industry to make aviation even safer.
NASA has announced that it will be taking women to the moon in a new mission called Artemis, goddess of the hunt, as well as the moon and Apollo's twin sister. Speaking at the 2019 Paris Air Show, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine said NASA would to retire the risk, prove the technology, and we are going to take it out to Mars.
Now we're going back to the moon. And this time when we go to the moon, we have a very diverse, highly qualified astronaut corps. 50 years ago, we called it Apollo. It just so happens that Apollo has a twin sister. Her name is Artemis, and she also happens to be the goddess of the moon. This time when we go to the moon, we're going sustainably, and we're going to go with this very diverse, highly qualified astronaut corps that includes women. So under a program named after the twin sister of Apollo, Artemis, we are now going to send women to the moon for the first time. We're here at the Paris Air Show because we're going with our partners. We're going with commercial partners and international partners. We're going to retire the risk, prove the technology, and we're going to take it on to Mars. So it's a great day to be here.
Apollo was the name of NASA's moonshot program that 50 years ago this summer achieved the first manned lunar landing. NASA landed 12 men on the moon over 6 Apollo missions. For the next go-around, the space agency wants its moonwalkers to reflect today's more diverse astronaut corps, thus the name of Apollo's sister. U.S. Secretary of Commerce Wilbur Ross said the U.S. is fully committed to investing in its aerospace industry.
U.S. weather officials said severe storms in central Indiana produced at least 4 tornadoes, leaving thousands without power and damaging buildings.
Looked like almost a finger coming down, and then it like touched the ground, and then when it touched the ground, then it just took off and kind of went around where we were at, and they formed, and then they went this direction.
Did you guys try to seek shelter?
It happened so fast, there was no time to. In other words, I just hollered at everybody, get underneath the picnic tables and grab a post.
The National Weather Service said the tornadoes touched down on Saturday evening in the following counties: Owen, Monroe, Marion, and Rush. No injuries were reported.
Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Tumblr. Also check out our boards and Pinterest and pictures on Instagram. I'm Sam Cepeda. Thanks for joining us.
And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles, and we're one with 25.